Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Gracier Rob's Shop of Wonders and Delights. Yes, the title is way too long, but hopefully some of the information is worth it. So, just wanted to give a shout out to Kitetsu. He's done a really great video on the analysis of Skaven in the General's Handbook. Yes, it looks like I haven't watched it, but I have in fact watched the whole thing of both parts. It was really good, and it was basically exactly what I was saying about how there's this big problem with Master Clan. And I was also talking about other things as well, but in my video about fun and the new meta. But he's basically saying the same thing, whereas his answer to the problem at hand was to merge everything. My hope was that they would just merge, say, Verminus and Master Clan, but he has some really great points about it, and highly recommend you check out his channel. So shout-outs to him. But now I just wanted to go on to the main topic at hand, wargaming meta as applied to competitive fighting games. So what is this? Well, first, I need to go through a couple of things, right? But basically, it's a new idea, I feel, on how we can compare and judge armies, how they exist in the meta. But first things first, the meta is brand new. It just came out like a week ago, or the General's Handbook just came out a week ago. So no one really knows what's going on, and I especially don't know what is going on. This is just an idea. It's not an opinion. Okay? So the next thing that I want to get out of the way before I go into my idea is go over how we judge armies now. So how we judge armies now is based upon a set of ideal aspects that they contain, and how much of that they contain and how strongly they contain that. So what we use now is stuff like mortal wounds and rend, i.e. damage output, how much they can put the hurt on other armies. Movement, like Khorne movement shenanigans at the start of the battle, slan teleportation, that kind of thing. Numbers, bodies on the table. The new meta is, everyone thinks it's going to be all about the hordes because of how the new rules work in the new battle plans. Survivability, stuff like Nurgle and Seraphon have the ability to either negate rend or have all these crazy ward saves. And there are many other armies. I'm just using a few examples right now. Reliability, so basically not Skaven. They are not reliable at all, but that is the fun of playing them. So this is how we judge armies now. Mostly. I'm sure I'm not containing everything, so sorry if something you think is vitally important is not listed here. I'm just using what I think is super important as an example, and this is how we judge armies now. We basically say, what do they have on here, and if they don't have something like say, Seraphon does not have a lot of damage output. They don't do a lot of mortal wounds or a lot of rend, depending on which unit you're talking about. So, do they have it and do they not have it? And so that is sort of how we judge where they are in the meta, right? But I think there is a problem with this. Not that we should stop using it, but that we should also add something else. And the reason is because, if an army has, say, all the tools, and another army has all of the aforementioned tools, then you can't really compare them that well, I feel. It doesn't allow for direct or strong counters to certain aspects of each army. An army can have all of the tools and still not be competitive, or vice versa, right? So, in certain situations, right? So it's really just it's not complete, I feel. So I have an idea for how I think we can fill in the gaps. But I also wanted to mention that it also, doesn't, you could have, the idea behind this is you could have an army that, supposedly has all the tools like Zeech or, some would argue Stormcast Eternals or possibly Sylvaneth or whatever else, whatever you think. Again, these are all opinions, but whatever you think is really good, but yet it still loses to armies that are supposedly bad or again, vice versa, something that is supposed to be really bad, but can win against these top tier armies, because I do think that that's possible in certain situations. So what's my idea? Well, my idea comes from Street Fighter. It comes from, the idea behind this comes from watching the Capcom Cup in 2015, which is the final, biggest tournament of the year. Over $100,000 is on the line for first place. And the guy who won it was not necessarily using the absolute best character. He was using Yun. And Evil Ryu was widely considered to be the most top tier, the guy with all the tools, the character with all the tools, I should say, to win the tournament. But yet, Daigo, often considered to be the best Street Fighter player of all time, lost to Kazunoko, who was using Yun, because it wasn't as good a matchup. Now, what a lot of people don't know is Daigo has a really, really good Sagat. And Sagat, apparently Daigo always beats Kazunoko with Sagat, but he chose not to use him because of how they do things over there. They have sort of an honor system where you kind of pick a character or two characters, and Sagat was not his second or third character. He was further down the line. So the reason that he didn't counterpick him was sort of like an honor-based system, but it just shows you, that even in a situation where that much money is on the line, he couldn't make it work, right? And so the idea behind this whole thing is we need to use matchups to further enhance how we dissect the meta. So what are matchups? Matchups are a 10-10 system where you have a total of 10 games. So, this naming that I'm using is a little, it's a little confusing maybe. But anyway, it uses a total of 10 games to compare how armies should win in a situation where both players are at the same level. So if it's a 10-0 matchup, that means that under no circumstances can one army beat another. Okay? 5-5 would mean totally even. So the example that we could use in wargaming is, and again, this is just an opinion, not necessarily even my opinion, but I'm just picking something, would be the Seraphon versus Zeech matchup. So I'm saying this from my perspective. Seraphon versus Zeech is a 7-3 match in Zeech's favor, because they can deny, say, Seraphon teleportation, which is supposedly what makes them so overpowered and really great in the new meta. I don't agree with this, of course, because I don't think they have the damage output. But putting that aside, this is sort of an example of a counter, And obviously Zeech is a very good army, or considered to be. Again, we don't really know anything, but is considered to be a very strong army. So this isn't the best example, but I couldn't really come up with, exact, because I just don't know enough other armies. But another example might be Skaven. But like say Skaven, or like I've got here, the Storm Fiends are considered very strong by a lot of people because they put out a lot of mortal wounds, but that doesn't help you in some of these large horde armies whom you need to be doing more wounds against, not mortal wounds, like goblins, the horde style. Death has a lot of that stuff with skeletons and zombies. Skaven themselves can do that with a lot of clan rats, but that Scryer army is not necessarily as strong against, some of these horde armies. So that's a counter to, an army that's maybe not necessarily considered to be super strong in the meta as it sits. So, that's the idea. An army can have a lot of tools, but not necessarily be the best. And so the idea is we use matchups to determine what is best and what is not necessarily as good. So again, 5-5 is totally even. 6-4 favors one side by a reasonable degree. 7-3 strongly favors one side. 8-2 is almost always in favor of one side. 9-1 is practically unwinnable except under very lucky circumstances for the weak side. And now, you might say, well, no, like, Rob, you're not using, math here. 9-1 means 10% of the time. It doesn't, though, in matchups, because a 10-0 is never winnable. 10-0 is 100%. So you can't have, 9.5 to a 0.5 matchup. That's not how it works, okay? We just say 9-1 is, you have to be absurdly lucky, because again, we're talking about comparing people who are of the same skill. That's important to remember. So when we talk about tiers, we don't use tier 1 and 2, which is what I hear a lot of people throwing around right now. Zeech is, tier 1, and maybe Murder Host is tier 0, as Tom Lyons likes to say. But when we talk about this match comparison system, we use A, B, C, and D tiers. And what it is A tier is like a character in Street Fighter or an army in wargaming, or it could be used. This is my suggestion, of course. A tier would be something who, when you take all of their matchups, so let's say you take Seraphon. So Seraphon, you say, has a 7-3 matchup versus Zeech, and has a they have a 7 or a 3-7 matchup, against Zeech, and say maybe they have a 7-3 matchup against Death, so they're better against Death, and then you go on and on and on. You compare every army, and again, you need to experience a good amount against each army to be able to do this. But when you take them all together, then A tier, sorry, I had to clear my throat because my throat is quite dry. A tier would be, when taking all their matchups, A tier is they have mostly good matchups. So 75% or say more means when let's say there was a total of 10 armies, right? Or let's say, well, there isn't, but anyway, so 75% of the time their matchups are good or strongly in favor of them. B tier is 51% or more good matchups. So, or even you could say 50% or more. 50% of the time or more, they have good matchups. And C tier would be less than 50% of the time, say maybe 25 to 50% of the time, they have very good matchups. And D tier, or worse, is they have mostly bad matchups, so 0% to 25% of the time. As an example, it doesn't have to be like this. I mean, a lot of people would probably say that, A tier is probably closer to 80 to 90% good matchups, and B tier is, somewhere in there, but higher maybe than I said. But it's open to interpretation. You can do what you want, but this is the idea, right? You've got a clear top, you've got a clear top middle, and then you've got a clear bottom middle, and you've got a clear bottom, right? And you can still separate them further. You can use A pluses, A minus, B pluses, B minus, and so you can kind of see where things line up. Again, this is an opinion. It's not meant to be taken as fact, but it's just a more clear, concise, and full way of viewing matchups. S tier, I will mention, it's if you play Japanese RPGs or fighting games, you're probably aware of what S tier means. It basically means really strong. They basically have their own tier where they pretty much have no bad matchups or no bad matchups straight up. So feel free to use that. I don't think it will ever apply to wargaming, but there it is. So what do you guys think? This is just an idea. It's a thought experiment, as you might say, or maybe perhaps you would consider it an A tier idea. I think it's maybe a B tier idea, so it has more good points than it has bad. But let me know what you think. I would love to hear about it in the comments below. Be sure to like the page if you liked it, and again, check out Kitetsu's, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, his channel, because it's been quite interesting. Everything I've seen so far has been really good. So take care, guys, and I'll see you next time.